again, we want to welcome you to PIDC and Philadelphia's 38th Annual Med Week as we present today's program, Why Your Loan May Not Get Approved, the Hidden Issues of Using Real Estate as Collateral. We're excited to have this expert panel of professionals who will be led by my colleague, Arthur Jimenez, who is PIDC's Senior Business Development Officer. He will be our moderator for today's discussion. And today is, in fact, a discussion. Arthur is a seasoned professional who's been working with small businesses for over 10 years and understands the challenges faced by business owners. And he further understands those issues that are not always clear to a business owner. So today's webinar is not just an attempt to explain tangled titles, but we're also going to discuss the ways tangled titles can inhibit business growth and efforts towards creating generational wealth. PIDC is pleased to be a continuing partner in this 38th annual celebration of the accomplishments of minority diverse businesses. We still have a lot of work to do, yet here we are after 2.5 years of a devastating pandemic. We're celebrating you, the minority businesses. Got our sleeves rolled up, ready to take greater steps as this year's theme states, forging the future, growing generational wealth. Now, it is my pleasure to turn this portion over to my colleague, Arthur Jimenez. Arthur, take it away.
Thank you, Marla. Again, my name is Arthur Jimenez. I'm the Senior Business Development Officer. I'll get started on the slides here. And thank you again for joining us this morning. I know there's a lot of other events you can attend during Med Week, so thank you for making the time to join ours. I first want to thank our partners our partners from the City of Philadelphia, Department of Records, Quick Abstract LLC, Rehoboth Real Estate, and from the Sear & Lesser and Benson attorneys. Today's speakers will be myself and Marla. You heard from both of us already. And you also hear from Sergio Giraldo, owner of the Rehoboth Real Estate and Cash Flow Property Management, Keisha White, owner of the Abstract LLC, Dorothy Ann Hamill, partner at Sear & Lesser and Benson, and last but not least, Tracy Williams, our Deputy Commissioner at the City of Philadelphia's Department of Records. So before we talk to the speakers, I'll just give an introduction about PIDC and how we are the official economic development partner of the City of Philadelphia, and a quick overview of our loan application process. Okay. Well, PIDC's vision for Philadelphia's economy is that the Philadelphia's economy is a growing, diversified, and inclusive, and producing a high quality of life for all residents, businesses, visitors, and workers. Our mission is to connect people, places, and opportunities to spur investments, support business growth, and foster development that creates jobs, revitalize neighborhoods, and drive growth to every corner of Philadelphia. And at PIDC, we execute this mission through our core strategies of achieving the vision of a Philadelphia economy. One is through supporting growing businesses. So we do that by providing small business loans and technical assistance to businesses in Philadelphia. Secondly, we invest in high impact community revitalization. And thirdly, we create workplaces for the future. So when I say supporting growing businesses, as earlier I said we provide small business loans to small businesses from $50,000 up to about $1 million now. Our real estate team does help us at PIDC invest in high impact community revitalization. So we really get involved in high impact, high job creating projects in typically highly distressed or low income areas in Philadelphia. And lastly, we help to create workplaces of the future, such as the Navy Yard, repositioning that as a corporate hub now of, I think we believe we have over 150 companies there now with 15,000 employees. And now in the near future, hopefully, it will be the Lower Schuylkill Biotech Center, where we will helping develop that land and create more jobs in the biotech industry. Okay. And more focusing on supporting growing businesses. At this point, we provide over 500 plus loans now, deploying over $150 million to growing businesses in Philadelphia. We only lend to businesses in the Philadelphia County, and our loans have gone to 96% or more now to city zip codes. More than half of our business loans go to women or minority-owned businesses, and all our loans help to have created over 7,000 jobs and retained 7,000 jobs. And through our technical assistance program, we've helped to increase credit scores by over, for our business borrowers, over 60% increase in their credit scores, and also help to increase their net income by 50%. Here's a snapshot of our typical business borrower. Typically they have revenues of 500,000 or more. That's the average. They usually have 12 employees, and a credit score is 650 or lower. So I really like showing this slide to show the diversity of our clients and really show like what kind of businesses we work with. You know, some people might think I might have to make over $1 million, $2 million to work with PIDC, and that's not true. You know, the minimum is typically 100,000, but our average usually is about $500,000. Okay. Our business loan products are, these are our 4 business products we provide. First is the working capital and equipment loan. So you can use that to provide to purchase equipment, supplies, inventory, even help you hire staff for your business. Next, we have the contract line of credit. So that helps you get paid on contracts, either public or private contracts. That helps to accelerate slow paying contracts that could pay you 60 days or more. If you have a contract line of credit, you can get paid in about 2 weeks after approval. And then the last 2 is a capital project loan and a commercial mortgage loan, really help you purchase a property and improve upon it in Philadelphia, so you can become an expansion project or for your next headquarters. Okay. And the reason I bring that up is we want to talk about real estate, and real estate's one of the 5 C's of credit in terms of collateral. So when we analyze your loan application, we evaluate that by the 5 C's of credit. First is character. So character is the management background of the business. That includes your credit score, your credit history, your history of borrowing money in the past. The next C is collateral. So that could be your business assets. That could be additional collateral such as real estate, which we'll talk about a little bit more. The next C is cash flow. So talking about to borrow money, you have to show that you can pay in the future. So you show that through cash flow. How profitable is your business? Typically over the last 3 years, how profitable your business be or growing in the next 3 years. So through projections, that's what we look for in cash flow. Next is capital, looking at things like your balance sheet, retained earnings in your business. Has your business been profitable for several years, or maybe not because of COVID? Again, we look at that in a more flexible manner. And how much capital are you putting into your projects, and how much skin in the game do you have, so to speak? And then how is PIDC going to assist you in completing that project? And then lastly, looking at the economic conditions of the entire economy, and sometimes specifically to your industry. Okay. So more specifically talking about collaterals, when we look at a loan application, we do ask the minimum collateral requirements for a loan are usually personal guarantees. So that is asking for the personal guarantees of the owner of the business. We also typically on standardized, we put a lien on business assets. We can be a first lien or a second lien, that's fine. And then if we have a contract in place, we're providing a contract line of credit. We ask for an assignment of contract proceeds. So that's minimum, the collateral requirements. Enhanced collateral requirements, I would say this is required for larger size loans. We may ask for a mortgage lien on personal real estate, either personal or commercial, actually, real estate. A lien on a CD or marketable securities, a certificate of deposit or CD. A lien on other personal assets, perhaps these are for larger size loans. Sometimes more assets are needed for collateral. And lastly, if there is a personal property that's co-owned by a spouse, we ask for a spousal guarantee. Okay, so this leads me to reintroducing our panel here. The first question I'd really like to talk about goes to Sergio Giraldo of Rehoboth Real Estate. So Sergio, can you tell us what the value is of working as with a real estate broker?
Good morning, everyone.
I'm
It's a
sorry,
pleasure.
Sergio. I also want you to give yourself like a couple minutes to introduce yourself.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I am the founder of Rehoboth Real Estate and Cash Flow Property Management. I've been over 17 years in the business here in Philadelphia, mostly in North Philly. So yeah, it's working with a real estate broker or real estate agent. It gives you some edges. As far as negotiation, as far as guiding you, as far as finding you the next property that your business needs, identifying the property, identifying your needs, and sort of looking in the market and matching, getting you a match with the property, and help you throughout the process, connecting you with the resources as well as like PIDC, title companies like Quick Abstract with Keisha White, attorneys, Dorothy, and Tracy from the city of Philadelphia. So we do take you step by step in finding you the property, or at least guiding you in the right directions to where, what goes next. Some of the savvy investors do it themselves, but some business owners get so tangled up in doing the everyday activities with the business that have not too much time to be looking around for properties, looking at which one is the best options. So yeah, I think working with a real estate broker is a very important first step in finding your next property.
Thank you for that, Sergio. Keisha White of Quick Abstract, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, sorry, I had to take myself off of mute. My name is Keisha White. I am the owner of Quick Abstract LLC. We're located in the Fairmount section of here in Philadelphia. I've been in the title business for 21 years, bring a lot of knowledge in terms of tangled titles, issues with titles. We are a fast growing title company. We have about maybe 60 to 80 closings a month. And we are just geared to helping individuals, gain generational wealth. And with that comes a clear title and making sure that, any issues on the title are cleared up prior to going to settlement, so that we can protect your investment.
Thank you, Keisha White. Can I ask you, Dorothy Hamill, to introduce yourself and a little bit about what the value of, introduce yourself, please, and also if you can kick it off by saying what's the value of hiring a real estate attorney.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on the discussion today. I am a partner at Sterling, Lesser & Benson. I've been an attorney for about 25 years, predominantly commercial real estate, and do a lot of buying, selling, financing of real estate. And I can tell you that using an attorney, particularly, in your first purchase, can have a lot of value because they can provide you with sort of a roadmap of what to expect, and then to give you the guidance that you need as you start the process to find, to identify and overcome the hurdles that you may encounter during that process. And certainly, having a good title company and a good broker, with those three parties sort of working together with you, can make the acquisition process much smoother.
Thank you for that, Dorothy. And lastly, I'd like to give a chance to Tracy Williams to introduce herself, and also can you give us talk about your role at the Department of Records, please?
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. My name is Tracy Williams. I am the Deputy Commissioner for the Records Department, and the Records Department is the public-facing office for where mortgages, satisfactions, and any type of deeds and real property is recorded.
Thank you, Tracy. So we've introduced all the panelists. I'm going to ask a couple of questions and then I'm going to point it to one person in the beginning, but please feel free to, like, if you want to add more, your perspective on the question and answer, please just, chime in. Sergio, I'll start with you. So Sergio, do you know what the role what was the role of title play in the exchange of real estate property from buyer to seller?
Well, the role of a lot of people underestimate the role of title companies, and that's a vital part in any real estate transaction. I mean, I advise all my clients, regardless if they use a broker, if they use an attorney. My advice is always to use an attorney or broker, especially in real estate in commercial transactions, but always use a title company. Because you don't know, I mean, you don't know, a lot of people just go in the Atlas and the city's website and they say that, taxes are up to date or they owe X amount of dollars and they say, okay, I will pay it. But that's not about it. Title insurance covers, the entire, everything with the property, and not just, it's regardless of the condition, because a lot of people mistaken it for the condition. One thing is the condition of the property that you're able to see and inspect yourself or hire a professional. But another thing is what goes behind, the history of that property, make sure it's not tangled. And, the first thing you gotta do is audit title. I mean, if you're planning on doing something with a property, a commercial property, buying, get title insurance. We have a Keisha here with a whole bunch of experience. She will guide you through the whole process. And the first thing you gotta do it from the beginning, because a lot of people just start negotiating and then, we were talking about the issues with the water department. So you have to place the order right away as soon as you get the property and the contract, as soon as you're buying it. Go hire a title company to start working on your, on your title.
Thanks, Sergio. That's actually a great segue for Keisha White. My question is, what is title insurance and what does a title company do? And what does the title insurance protect you from?
So basically what the title company does is we search the public records. Sometimes we go back as 100 years, and in searching the public records, we make sure that all the rightful owners that are showing up in the chain of title actually own the property. We search for any judgments, any liens, any restrictions or easements that could potentially affect the title at a later date. Once that title search is done and we're able to determine that the title is clear and marketable, we offer title insurance. And basically that title insurance covers you as long as you own the property. So if anything comes up while you own the property that the title company that we did not catch, that title insurance kicks in and it actually protects the buyer and it protects their investment, with what they purchased. Searching the city records is huge because like Sergio was talking about, some people just search Atlas, or they just go to the OPA site to search to see whether taxes are owed. The title search actually does a more in-depth search and making sure that you don't have any PGW liens, you don't have any water liens, taxes, to make sure that the person that you are buying the property from is the rightful owner. There's a lot of fraud in the city of Philadelphia, so we always want to make sure that the person who you're buying the property from is actually the owner. And those are the things that the title search covers, and also the things that your title insurance will cover, because we're guaranteeing that the person that sold the property to you is actually the rightful owner. So title insurance is extremely important. I always tell people it's similar to car insurance. You don't want to go buy a new car and not have car insurance, because once you get in an accident, you need to file a claim against, your insurance company. So title insurance is the same way.
And I didn't realize.
To protect.
Thanks, Keisha. And title insurance covers you for the entire, while you own the property, for not just to help you close on the property or acquire it. It's also for the life that you own the property.
Yep, as long as you own the property, if you own it for 60 years, it will cover you throughout that duration. The only time your title insurance is no longer valid is if you change the title to the property. But as long as you own it, that title insurance policy will cover you for the life of you owning the property.
I would
Okay.
like to stretch a little more on that, if you let me, Art.
Sure.
I think it's very important what Keisha said. Some people do a nominal deed. They just transfer the property to somebody else without understanding that at that time, the title insurance is no longer in force.
Oh, if you transfer it.
So if you transfer it to
Interesting.
your mom, to anybody, let's say you own it free and clear and you transfer it, title insurance stops right there. So when you transfer, I tell my clients, I educate my clients about, if you're gonna transfer it, don't just do a nominal deed. You gotta, get title insurance, so that way you're still covered. Because that's a mistake that I see a lot of people doing, just
I
transfer.
didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's a common mistake people make. A lot of times people may own a property in their individual name and they have title insurance, and then let's say they switch it to an LLC. The minute they switch it to an LLC, that owner's policy for the title insurance is null and void, because now the LLC owns the property. Same thing with a transaction between family members. Mom may have had title insurance, but the minute she transfers it to her son or daughter, if title insurance is not included in that purchase, then that insurance policy becomes null and void.
Oh, great. And I think it's a great segue for Dorothy. I know when there's issues, it's good to engage an attorney. So what tip for you, Dorothy, questions I have is, what typical issues are to getting clear title on the property? And do you have any kind of best practices you can recommend?
So I think what everybody said, which is most important, is getting title ordered early. Typically in a commercial transaction, you'll have a period which is called the due diligence period, which gives you sort of a free look, typically about 30 days, which allows you to do all of your physical inspections of the property to find out what condition it's in, but also looking at title and raising the issues of title before your due diligence period expires. And I think that, as has been said before, I think people don't appreciate how important that is. And, people think, oh, I'm buying this property for my cousin. Like, of course it has to be fine. And, we've seen a lot of that where people, it's a friendly transaction, quote unquote. And, that's great, because maybe by doing it that way, you're saving on taxes or realtor fees, in some cases, but it's still rife with the same issues. And if you don't have title insurance, it's going to be a problem. And particularly, one thing that I think is very important is, in past classes, we've talked about people building wealth through buying properties at sheriff sale, which is certainly, a great idea, but you have to keep in mind that you're not going to get title insurance if you purchase a property at sheriff sale. Most title companies will not give you title insurance on a sheriff sale property, and you usually have to wait, at least a year to get title insurance, because there's just so much out there. If property's going into default, and that's why it's being sold, there's mortgage liens, tax liens.
Oh, wow. I
I
didn't realize that.
Electric, gas, water. So it's not to say, oh, well, gosh, because you can't get that, you don't want to do it. But this is where a good title company can come into play too, because, you're going to know well before you actually go to the sale what properties you're looking at. And for a few $100s, you're going to be able to say to somebody like Keisha, hey, could you run us a record owner lien search on this? And you'll get an idea. We've had people who've bought properties not realizing that the property was encumbered by a mortgage. So they're like, they go to close and, they come to us and are like, well, I didn't realize I was buying this property, and there's a a mortgage that didn't get released because it was a real property sale or something like that. So having someone, and I think that it's important that you realize once you have a title issue, you have to act promptly in talking to an attorney, because there are, statute of limitations issues, time issues, and time is nobody's friend in real estate transactions. So, you want to make sure, and if you're buying a property, in a, not a sheriff's sale, but from a third party, you're going to want to talk to them, because it's going to be up to them to fix it. If you haven't closed yet, it's going to be up to the seller to fix it. And so during that time, you're going to want to bring it to their attention to get them to fix it. And if, you are taking a property you already own and are going to use that for financing, it's important too to start the process early, because if it is, a tangled title type situation, that's not going to get fixed overnight. And it's not going to get fixed likely in, 30 days, depending on, sort of the level of tangled it is. If there are other heirs and people that have to be found, I mean, there's a lot that can go into that. So you need to set your expectations and set your expectations with your lender to say, hey, look, I think, I've talked to my title company. Here's where I think I might have a problem. I'm going to need a little more time. But, acting promptly, being proactive are two of the most important things you can do.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome advice. And I think also a good segue to Tracy at the Department of Records. So Tracy, I understand that the city has a Tangled Title program. Could you give us a little background about that and the services offered?
Sure. The city has a Tangled Title program that's primarily administered through the Division of Housing and Community Development. These funds are used or issued to, it's a grant funded program. You have to be low income and meet certain eligibility requirements. The funds are used though for inheritance taxes usually, or transfer taxes. This particular part of the program you can't use for legal services. There's another entity, VIP Legal Services, that you would apply if you needed the resources of attorney work.
Okay, and then Tracy, can you also talk a little about how what the role of Register's Wills is in helping you clear a title?
Sure. The Register of Wills, their role is primarily not to clear a title, but they can be the first step in untangling a title, depending on the situation. So if you're dealing with a type of issue where you have a loved one that's passed away and you're living in the home and the property is still in your loved one's name, then your first step would be to go to the Register of Wills and open up an estate. That's the first step in untangling a title. About a year ago, the Register of Wills, recognizing that probate fees can be a deterrent and a hindrance, because a lot of folks don't have the funds that are required to probate an estate. Probate an estate can cost anywhere from $500 plus, depending on the assets. So what the Register of Wills did was she created a program called the Probate Deferment Initiative, where she waived the probate fees, and our office will waive the recording fees. We were hoping that that would be an incentive for individuals to come in, open up the estates. That way they can tap into their assets. And because if the house is entangled, if you're in a tangled title situation, you can't do anything with that property.
Right.
You can't borrow from it. You can't move forward. And as Dorothy said, it can take years sometimes to untangle those titles. It's very expensive. It costs anywhere between $90 to $100 to untangle titles. So we were hoping that this would be the first step in getting families to come in and move forward with opening up estates and allowing them to tap into their generational wealth.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like an incredible program the city's offering. I think much needed because I did read it in the Pew Charitable Trust study that over 100,000 titles are tangled in Philadelphia.
10,000.
Is it 10,000?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, 10,000. So that's
There may be,
a
it
lot.
could be 100, but the Pew study stated that there were 10,000 titles, which equates to more than 10,000 families. Because and a lot of times in homes, you have more than one generation living in a home. So it's well over 10,000 families that this impacts.
Okay. And you mentioned the probate process. And you can answer this and also other, panelists as well. Can you explain a little more about what is probate and why is it required? Is it required to go through when you inherit a property?
Well, it's required. I'm going to leave that. I can toss that to Dorothy.
Okay, great.
Yes, so probate is what happens when you have a family member dies and they either have a will or they don't have a will. And, what happens is what properly should happen is somebody is appointed the administrator of the estate to make sure that the state, the city, the taxes are paid that should be paid on the estate. Oftentimes, when you're talking about a tangled title and it's a single residential property, most times there's no taxes that are due, but you still have to go through the process. And I think a lot of times people don't understand that and they say like, oh, my grandma only had, one property, we don't have to do anything. And then, it's much harder, more taxing, not in the monetary taxing, but taxing on your time. If you wait, 10 years and then somebody says, oh, hey, maybe we should deal with this. Well, now you're going to have to go back and, okay, my grandmother had 5 kids and those kids had, 5 kids between them. So now I have to reach out and try and find all these people. And that's why the resolution of tangled title can take so long. So again, it's important for people to realize, particularly with this great program from the city, which is helping with the probate costs. It should be if there are no taxes due, it's very, the initial process is very inexpensive. And it still may, end up not being cheap, but it's going to be less expensive if you deal with it at the time it happens than if you wait 5, 10, 15 years. Because as I go back to my advice, time is never anybody's friend where real estate is concerned. You want to deal with things as they happen, because then that's going to put you on the road to tapping into that resource to then be able to build that generational wealth going forward. Not doing that hinders that process so much. And I think, the more that it gets out there, the more that, people talk about the tangled title and the program and how to address it, it's going to give people more of an opportunity to use that resource to build wealth for the future.
Okay, thanks for that, Dorothy. And you were talking about costs. So there is a cost to go through probate. It sounds like some of it's going to be offset by the city program. Can you give a little high-level overview of what costs look like?
So the cost of probate is the initial filing. And the initial filing, you know, obviously I'm not a state attorney, but I think the initial filing is probably, you know, somewhere $100, $200. Tracy could certainly correct me on that. But if there's no tax due, you know, there's, you know, you're putting that completely out of the picture. But where the cost is really going to come in is in the scenario that I discussed, where grandmom dies, there are 5 heirs to, you know, maybe grandmom didn't have a will and there's 5 heirs and those heirs each have a child. So now where the cost is going to come in is, you know, notifying, you know, maybe you're in touch with 3 of those people, 2 of those people moved out of state. Now you're trying to find them, or one of those people died and you're trying to reach the child of the one sibling who died. So that's where your cost is going to come in. And then, you know, obviously once you start this process and, you know, maybe the person who moved out of state is like, oh, I didn't realize I might be entitled to something, you know, and maybe they're, you know, let's face it, disputes happen when people think that there's money or the potential for money. Yeah, so that's where, you know, the cost can start to really accrue, because, you know, you're sort of, you know, in some cases, it's like herding cats. You know, you're trying to get all these people together to, you know, administer this estate. And, you know, it can be time consuming. You know, the person who gets appointed to administer the estate, you know, if there are multiple people, siblings, that kind of thing, it's going to take some time to, you know, sort that out. But as I, you know, not to be a dead horse, but if you do it on the front end, you're doing yourself and your family a favor on the back end, because then that's going to, next time you go to do something with that property, it's going to be free, clear, in good title, and it's going to cut down on your costs and your aggravation when you go the next time.
Thanks for that, Dorothy. Does anyone else share any other perspectives? Keisha, Sergio, or Tracy on that?
Just that the Register of Wills, the average cost is about $500 to $700 to open an estate.
Oh. Well, so I was way off there. Sorry, everyone.
But that's the probate, to go through the probate process, that's a different expense. Is that right? And there's a grant program for that, Tracy? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that's the Probate Deferment Initiative through the Register of Wills office.
So how much
But
is
you
that
have to be
usually?
income eligible as well.
Oh, okay.
So the fees are waived. The probate fees are waived when an estate is created, but a small lien is placed on the property. And then if the property is ever transferred or sold, then you have to pay the probate fees at that time. No interest is ever accrued though during the process.
Okay.
I just want to chime in. One other fee, once the estate is open, that administrator or executor, whichever way it works out, is responsible for filing an inheritance tax return. And based on the size of the estate, whether that person was a wealthy person, if they had a bank account, if they owned other properties, that is a fee that is assessed to the estate that has to be paid once that property is sold.
So that's, oh, okay. Could you back up a little? So when is that? How is that fee assessed? It's based upon the.
So the inheritance taxes are based off what the property was worth at the time that the person died. So there's a calculator that the city uses, and based on that number is how they determine, you know, how much is owed for inheritance taxes. The reason why I mention that is because a lot of times that's missed. And if the property's transferred and those inheritance taxes aren't paid, there's a, you know, they can put a lien on a property, which eventually affects the title.
Plus, there are some.
Just so if I could tag on to what Keisha said, I think that's important too, to recognize, because when you're going to sell a property or you're doing finance or something with the property where you're trying to figure that out, that's going to be, when you look at a title commitment is going to have certain conditions that you're going to have to satisfy in order for the title company to close. And one of those items is going to be to satisfy any inheritance tax that might be due. So again, that's why working with somebody like Keisha is a good idea, because they're going to be able, they're going to pull that, bring that information to your attention, and then, be able to assist you with, working through that process.
Thanks, Dorothy. Sergio, did you also want to share something?
Yes, about the same topic. Keisha, usually those accountants are the ones that usually file those for people, usually, right? I mean, people can do it themselves, but they can also get the help from an accountant. Because I believe there are some expenses that could be deducted as far as the funeral expense,
Absolutely.
So
yeah, typically either an attorney can prepare it or somebody that just has experience with preparing returns. But you can deduct a lot of if there's liens on a property, if they owe taxes, if there's anything from the title that's considered debt, typically you can put on the inheritance tax return, which eventually helps them in how much money that they have to actually pay towards the estate. So that is correct, Sergio.
And that should be done, just going back to Dorothy, soon after the inheritance tax, the state is open, because when you go to settlement, if you haven't filed the inheritance tax, there's gonna be some money put in escrow, correct? For settlement to happen.
That's correct, yes. So the inheritance tax return should be done as soon as possible. A lot of times people don't realize that you have 9 months from the date of death to file that return. Once that 9-month period has expired, interest begins to accrue, which is then owed to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So as soon as you can get that return done, and a lot of times people aren't aware, if they haven't opened up the estate and the decedent has been dead for say 10 or 15 years, right off the bat, they're already going to accrue that interest from that 15-year period, which eventually when you go to settlement, that is money that's held in escrow, because that money has to be paid to the Commonwealth. So the sooner the better to get that return done.
Thanks, Keisha. How about, this is somewhat unrelated, but could be related, is zoning issues. I know zoning, does title insurance cover you from zoning issues?
No, title insurance does not. No, the only thing we have in our title report, it just shows you how the property is zoned. So if it's a single family or a CMX2, but outside of that, title insurance does not protect you from zoning.
Okay.
And people make a lot of mistakes thinking that they're getting title insurance, title insurance is gonna find out what's the proper zoning for that particular property, and it's not part of the title insurance. That's very important question, Art, that people commonly mistake. That's a common mistake that.
So,
Just to chime in,
And I think that I was just going to say, people have come to us after the fact and said, well, the seller told me this was a 3-family triplex, and it turns out that it's a duplex or it's only single family. And they come to us and say, oh, well, I want you to, make a claim on my title because, this isn't what I thought I was getting. And, unfortunately, you have to explain to people that's not part of your title insurance. They are insuring your ownership of the property, so that if somebody else comes in, you own the property, and Bob Smith comes in and tries to make a claim, then you have insurance that they can say, no, he had no claim to the property. And they'll take over the defensive title for you. But what the actual zoning is, that period of time that I discussed in a commercial transaction where you due diligence, where you have your opportunity to inspect and do all of your evaluations on the property, one of the first things that you should be doing is, if you sign an agreement of sale that this is a three-unit triplex, is to find out if that's what the actual zoning is, because that's going to be on you. The seller, is never going to make a representation of that in their agreement of sale. They're leaving that inspection to you. So that's important in the, off title,
Due
but
diligence period.
in the due diligence to take care of that.
I also think that's where having a real estate agent or real estate broker play, because that is their job to represent you and to make sure that the property you're buying is actually zoned correctly. So a lot of times people don't want to pay the fee to have an agent or a broker, but it can cost you money in the long run, which is why it's important to have a professional like Sergio, who can actually make sure that the property do exactly what you would like it to do.
And related to zoning, we get a lot of, I get a lot of properties that are, I guess, abandoned or not being used as how it's been used for the past years. I saw a property on Frankfurt Avenue. It was a bar for Jesus. It's like 50 years. But it's been closed for like 10 years. So the zoning, the LNI, I think it says 1 to 2 years. If the property is being vacant, is unoccupied, the current zoning, the use of the property drops to single family. So you have to reapply and going through this, the zoning is a process that costs money, and it's not guaranteed that you're going to get approved again for the use that was used forever. So that's something that is very important. The zoning, what the property is zoned for, what's the use for the property. Not necessarily because it was used in the past as something, means that is, especially on vacant properties that have been vacant for years, that you're going to be allowed to use it the same way. So again, going back to that, but that's totally is separate from title insurance.
Is there anything? Oh, go ahead, Dorothy.
I just wanted to jump in sort of, because this, sort of triggered what Sergio said, sort of triggered something else to think about in title is, when you get it, the title insurance is going to have certain exceptions to your policy, meaning those are things that the title insurance will not cover. And typically things like that are easements, which are recorded of record, or unrecorded easements. And easements are things like, PGW has the right to come across your lawn to replace a gas line. The utilities usually have it. But there are also there are easements between adjoining property owners. There are development agreements. There are agreements with people who maybe have bought a property from PHA, who were the RDA, in which they were, the government agency allowed them to buy the property because they're supposed to do X, Y, and Z with the property. So it's important that you take a look at those things with your broker or with your attorney so that you understand what they mean. Because if you're, I just had a situation come up 2 weeks ago where our client owns a property that has an easement across the adjoining property. That adjoining property was sold at sheriff's sale. A gentleman bought it and promptly deposited a shipping container on the edge of the property. And, you know, we're currently in the process of trying to get him to understand why he can't do that. And it's because, you know, he didn't realize when he bought the property that there was an easement that benefited another property besides his. So his intention, he can't use the property for what he intended because there is this easement. You also have situations where, you know, I was doing financing on a property that was a beer distributor that had an old restriction on it that said that you couldn't sell alcohol on the property. Now, you know, so you'll see these in titles, some really, you know, crazy restrictions. And many of those are not enforceable today. But the fact is, you want to make sure that you look at all of those exceptions, and the title company will tell you what they are. They'll give you copies of them so that you can read them, review them with your professional to make sure that whatever your intention for that property is, there's nothing that will prevent you from doing that.
Thanks, Dorothy, for sharing that. Did someone want to speak before I ask another question? I forget if someone asked if someone raised their hand. There's also a request that if the presenters can put in their contact information in the chat, if you can just take a moment to do that, please. I think our audience would love that. And I also want to remind I think we can open it now to questions and answers to the audience. So, you know, we'll give you a couple minutes to think about your questions, because our panelists, as you can tell, are very good at what they do. They have a ton of experience. They can, I think, answer any question you throw at them, real estate related. So now is the time to ask them any questions you may have, just, you know, real estate title related or real estate related, because their time is free for now. And, you know, after this, you may have to pay for their time if you need their expertise on something. I didn't see any open questions yet.
Hey, Art, there was a quick question in the chat that asked if presenters can share their contact information. If you can also list that. I'm not sure if there was also a slide with that information as well. If they can place that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a slide on that. I wasn't able to put that together.
Yes, our presenters will place their information in the chat.
Okay.
And please feel free to raise your hands or place your questions in our chat or Q&A box, and our panelists will answer.
Awesome. Okay. I think we covered a lot of questions already. And I think I think you already mentioned some of this, Dorothy. So what does title insurance does not include? And you already said there's some exceptions that are listed. So it's typically zoning issues. Are there other issues that come up that are usually not covered by title insurance that you're aware of? Or Keisha, can you also mention that?
But I think some of the things, and Keisha can speak to this as well, but the typical things are easements that are already recorded. Typically taxes that have not yet been paid. And, you know, where that comes up, you know, there's two ways that come up. Number one, you know, there may be taxes that the title company missed. In that scenario, the title company would be responsible for insuring you against that loss, and they would be responsible. But if there are taxes that were not yet due at the time of closing, you know, and got assessed later by the city, the title company is not going to be responsible for those because they weren't yet due and payable. There are, I talked about development agreements that may have been recorded, memorandums of lease. They'll be accepted from your policy. Mortgages that have not yet been satisfied, maybe it's no, that should be covered. I'm sorry. But I'd like to talk about that for just a second. And I think more, title companies are trying to sort of clear this stuff up now is, oftentimes by the time you go to buy a property, the property's been owned by 3 different people who all had a mortgage. And even though those mortgages were all paid off, the lender may not have actually filed the mortgage satisfaction or the mortgage release. So it's still going to show up on title. And while, if that comes up in your title company is going to go back and look to the last insurer, and they'll be able to get that covered through a letter of indemnity. Usually, it's much easier and much cleaner if, when the first time you're doing it, if you can, get that lender to file the satisfaction or get you a copy. Now, that doesn't often happen quickly either, because a lender may have been sold, resold, moved, merged, things like that. But a title company can help you get that information. And while, something like that is not going to hold up your title, it's something that you definitely want to be aware of and continue to work with your title company to see if you can get that cleared up and taken off record, so that the next time you go to finance, it's cleaner. You don't have to worry about that. But these agreements, if you're already a land property owner and you sign a lease with somebody and you record a memo of lease, it's important that before that lease expires, that you want to get your tenant to sign a termination of memo of lease, so that that's not going to show up on title the next time you do something. And the title company is going to say, oh, you had a lease with Popeyes, or you have a lease with CVS, because those are sort of typically the big kind of tenants that may require that. They're going to accept that from title. And even though, that lease is over, there's no reason to leave sort of these kind of things affecting your title.
Keisha, do you want to add anything to that?
I think Dorothy covered, she covered it all basically in terms of what's accepted on the policy. Just want to talk a little bit about the unrecorded or mortgages that aren't satisfied. While letter of indemnity, we do that to get the file to the table. We always try to go the extra step in trying to research and get the mortgage satisfied once and for all. Because like Dorothy said, an LOI is just good for the title company. It basically states that, if any claim were to arise due to that mortgage, that the previous title company or underwriter will cover us. But, our goal is to get it removed once and for all so that it's not out there. Sometimes that does take time because a lot of the mortgage companies are out of business. Years ago, mortgage companies actually mailed the release to the homeowner, and sometimes the homeowner didn't actually know what to do with that.
Yeah.
I had a lady come to settlement one time. She had like 5 open mortgages with a company called Mid-Penn Consumer Discount, and she actually had the releases from years ago, but she did not know what it was. And when she came to the table, I said, this is what we've been researching, trying to look for. And she actually had it in her possession. So the letter of indemnity is important, but we also try to get it satisfied once and for all. Because if you go to sell that property, depending on the title company and what they want done, they may end up holding an escrow so they can get those mortgages actually released once and for all. So that is an important thing.
And those letters of release, do you have to go to the Department of Records to file them? Is that what the said you were saying?
So yeah, the satisfaction or release of mortgage, that's what ends up happening if they're not recorded with the Department of Records. there's no way of us knowing that that mortgage has actually been satisfied. And a lot of times people have those in their possession, they just don't know what to do with it. And they just think, oh, my mortgage is paid off and that's it. But they actually have to take that extra step to have it recorded so that when we search public records, that it does not show up as an open mortgage.
And I think that's why it's important to work with a good title company like Keisha's, because they are going to go that extra mile. Whereas some people, you know, I got it closed, it's fine, I'm moving on to the next file. If you have a good title company, they're going to say, yes, I've got, you know, I'm covered on this, but I want to make sure that going forward, you're not going to have a problem, and they're going to continue to work for your benefit to get that satisfied of record permanently. So the next time you're not going through the same hoops again.
Sergio, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, that takes us back to the importance of purchase title insurance, even when you transfer the property to a family member, because if there are any, let's say the title, you know, usually title companies do not go the extra mile and actually closing and getting a satisfaction and getting that rid of in the title. Usually they just get a letter of indemnity and just keep on going, you know, going on. So when titles, when a property get transferred to somebody else, and then that person do not purchase title insurance, and there any open items that could come up, is actually, and they actually come up when the new owner, you know, takes ownership, is not going to be covered by the previous title insurance. I'm not sure if you guys follow me, but Keisha, you know, just if you want to explain, you know, just going in a little more details, because then that person, the new owner, is going to be on the hook for whatever issue comes after he takes ownership without purchasing title insurance from previous issues that were not, you know, closed, you know, at the time of the transfer.
Yes, that is correct. Just to carry off what you said, Sergio. So yes, you should get that title insurance, even if you're transferring it from a family member. That family member possibly could have had mortgages that were not paid off. And then they transfer that debt over to you. And then the other family members like, oh, well, you know, mom told me property was free and clear, when in actuality, she forgot about 2 mortgages or lines of credit that she took out many, you know. So not always intentional, because sometimes people forget. But that's why you want to get the title and search done so that the title company can actually, you know, give you an outline of everything that's listed on that property.
There's a question asked: what happens if the mortgage company is no longer in business and they forgot to, you know, file that release, or what do you do?
So that happens quite frequently. So usually when mortgage companies are out of business, a lot of times they're purchased by other mortgage companies. So we have to do our research. We usually contact the Department of Banking. What most people don't realize is that when a mortgage company goes out of business, they have to file their information with the PA Department of Banking, the State Department. And that department usually has some kind of information as to who that mortgage company was sold to. And then we can kind of do our due diligence and trying to find out who would actually release that loan. When all else fails, if we aren't able to find we'd have to quiet title, and then we have to petition the court to file a release to have that mortgage satisfied. But that's usually the last option. We try to at least find a mortgage company, but sometimes we're just unsuccessful in doing that.
It's called filing a quiet title. Is that what you said?
Yeah, we'll petition the court, and then the court their due diligence, and then the court, if they find that they're not able to find that mortgage company, then the court will release it. But again, that's costs, fees associated. You have to hire an attorney. You know, it can be costly.
Sometimes I think it's good to add that, Keisha or Dorothy, is 30 days, once you paid a mortgage off, it's a requirement like 30 days for them to record a satisfaction. Is that correct? Because, you know, that happens with banks. But the situation is that a lot of people take private loans and they record a mortgage against the property. But usually these are not organizations well established where once it's paid off, they will go and record the satisfaction. And that stays on. So that's one thing that I tell my clients when they get like a private loan on the street or somebody else that is not like a well-recognized company, like a bank, that make sure once you pay that off, get something, get a satisfaction and record it, so that way you don't run into any issues down the road. I see that happen a lot.
Yes, and that's true. And there is statute that says if the mortgage company does not record the mortgage, and you have to give them 30 days notice, they don't record the mortgage within that time period after receiving the notice, you're entitled to treble damages, which means you're entitled to 3 times your damages. So, that's not a situation, you're not going to get damages in a situation where the title company went out of business or the title company got sold. It's going to happen if in the circumstance where you've sent notice to the mortgage company and said, here's the canceled check from the title company, here's the settlement sheet, here's your payoff letter. I've paid off my mortgage, I paid it off 3 months ago, you haven't recorded a satisfaction. If they don't then record a satisfaction within 30 days, then you would be entitled to damages. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to write a letter to the mortgage company and say, oh, hey, you didn't do this, pay me my damages. It just doesn't work that way. You'd have to file, you'd file legal action in order to force them to either record it if they haven't, or if they have recorded it, but you want damages, then you'd have to file suit in order to collect those damages. And I think it's important, in their circumstances, that while you're talking to your title company, that you're also talking to an attorney, because in the end, you want to be practical, and legal fees, regardless of what attorney you're using, legal fees are expensive. It just depends on the level of expense. And you don't want to spend a lot of time, aggravation, and money to try and collect damages when maybe you don't have a strong case for damages, maybe the damages really aren't that much. So it wouldn't make sense to spend $5,000 or $7,000 for a year to pursue damages that are $8,000. Like, that's just not a good use of resources. So you really want to, if that circumstance actually happens where you're not getting the response that the title company is, that the mortgage company has gotten the information and they're not recording that satisfaction, then that's when you really want to talk to an attorney to figure out like what your remedies are, how you're going to go about doing it, and what the expense of that is going to be.
Thanks for that, Dorothy. I wanted to ask Tracy a related question. What's the role of the Department of Records play into this? And how do mortgage companies file a satisfaction letter or release? Is it electronic? Is it through mail? How does the Records Department work? How do they receive these releases, and how does it play into this process?
Yeah, most of the mortgage companies will file their the releases or satisfactions electronically through one of our through our e-recording system, and then our which automatically then updates our records.
So that's a preferred method, is electronic.
Yeah,
okay.
That's the preferred method. I mean, very few send it by mail, or sometimes it may come in extreme situations.
Yeah.
Or it may come in by person. No, usually maybe by courier, or Federal Express mail or something like that. That's in very rare situations, but most of the time it's done electronically.
Do releases, do they have an expiration? Like I think Sergio or Ferro was saying, like they get a release mailed to them, like to the owner, but they never file it. Does it like, does that letter release expire? You have to get a new one? How does that work if you just never file it?
No, it doesn't expire. It just actually just sits out there until you actually get
Okay.
it recorded.
Mhm.
Like I said, a lot of times, years ago, they would mail the release to the client and make the client file it, but there's no expiration date on it. As long as it's
Mhm.
signed, notarized, you know, we
Okay.
can file it with the Department of Records.
And for a proactive owner, like say for myself, like I just refinanced refinanced last year when the rates are really low. I should double check that my previous mortgage holder actually released the lien. I released the mortgage on my house because now I have a new mortgage with a new lender, right? So if I want to be proactive, I could go to the Department of Records and just, that should be online too, right? I can check the
Mhm.
releases,
Yeah,
and
you can
that's
just
one way to do it.
check it online. Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yep, you can come into our office room 154 at City Hall. And one of our team members will be happy to assist you in providing you with a copy, a certified copy of your deed.
Awesome. Okay, great. Any questions from the audience? We have about 15 minutes left. Any questions have come up? I don't think anything came in the chat. I don't think I saw anything.
I was going to say, in talking about, where you said, oh, maybe I want to check to see if my prior mortgage company, there are, for something like this where you're not doing something new, not selling, not refinancing. Again, you can do two things. Number one, you can go back to your title company and say, hey, can you check that satisfaction got recorded? Because they're the ones who should be making sure. But you can also, maybe it's been a couple of years, maybe, your title company is no longer in business. And you just want to do a quick search. The city has a couple resources online, which is Atlas, which is atlas.phila.gov. In which you can look up property information, what the zoning is, if there's any zoning documents like use permits, things like that, they'll be online. They've also added, you can't print them, but you can see them. There's also a deed section now where you can see prior deeds, prior mortgages, and prior satisfactions. Now, keep in mind, it's not 100% accurate, and it takes time. If you just refinanced last month, there's very little chance that satisfaction, if it's been filed, has actually made its way onto the website. So, I always tell people you can use that sort of as a starting point. You don't want to, as with any record, you don't want to take everything at, oh, well, this is gospel, it must be correct, because it's not. The records may not have been updated. Plenty of times I've looked at Atlas, it has a different owner than who the current owner is, and it's because maybe it hasn't gotten recorded, or document got associated to a different property. There's also Philadocs, which is the online database for the Department of Records, where you can look up copies of to obtain a copy of your deed, a copy of your releases. It costs money. You can do a 1-day subscription, which is $15. So for $15, you can look up that information. It's, generally user-friendly. I think, you have to use a little bit to sort of figure out the nuances, because sometimes it's not easy. But it's pretty user-friendly and can get you the information. Two limitations are obviously, number one, things that have been done very recently are not, going to show up there. It's not going to get recorded on Monday and show up there on Tuesday. And also there's a time limitation to how far back you can go on the actual website. Anything, anything before, Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, I can never remember. I don't know if it's like 76 or something, anything before a certain date, you'd actually have to go physically to either go to the Department of Records to look, or contact a title company and ask the title company to do a search for you to find, an old document that you might need.
Yeah, we're actually piloting a program now, or project now, where the older records will be are being indexed and will be up and loaded.
Oh,
That's so exciting.
Yes, the records will go back. So that gap, there is a gap between, I think, around 1952, that period that you spoke about, that's missing.
Wow, that's very exciting. And that's, again, it's a great resource. If you're not in the process of selling or buying and you're just trying to, maybe you're just trying to look up, something from a prior financing, you don't have title company information or something like that. It's relatively inexpensive way to do a little research on your property.
We do have a question come in from Mercedes. Question is there a deadline to get title insurance on a property that has been owned for more than 10 years?
There's not a deadline, but your title insurance is going to start from the day that we sell you the policy. So if you've owned it for 10 years without title insurance, when we go to do the search and we search it back 60 to 100 years, if something has occurred within that 10-year time frame of you owning it, we would call that up on a title report, and you would have to, cover those items before we offer you the title insurance policy.
This is always forward looking. You're saying you can't.
Yeah, you can't backdate it. No.
Yeah.
It happens from the time that we actually offer you the policy.
I know we've thrown a lot of information. I think you can see our panelists have a ton of expertise about all of this. Is there anything that's been confusing to the panelists, or like they want to ask a few more questions? I mean, for the audience, are there anything that they've heard that they're not clear on, that they'd like a little more explanation, or we can double back to talk about on? Because now we have about 10 minutes, 11 minutes now to the time we have with our expert panelists. So, we want to make sure that you walk away clearly understanding everything they've said, how this relates to also the lending process. But it's more about how to get clear title on the process, on the property, so you can leverage it for a loan, you can leverage it for a sale, you can pass it on to your children, to the next generation. I just want to make sure everything's crystal clear before we end. I may call on a couple people I didn't recognize on the attendee list. Benthul, do you have any questions? No. I'll take that as a no. Inja, do you have any questions for our panelists, or even from me?
We do have a few questions coming in our chat box.
Oh, great.
Not sure if you've answered this one already. How successful has the Tangled title program been to date?
So the Tangled title program under the Division of Housing and Community Development, I don't have data on that particular program, but the Register of Wills Probate Deferment Initiative, under that, which has been active now for a little over a year, she successfully untangled 15, I believe, tangled titles. But if you look at that in terms of families, that's 15 families that are now able to access their generational wealth and do whatever, whatever they need to in terms of their property.
Thank you, Tracy. We have another question from James. James asks, approximately how many tangled titles are there in Philadelphia, and how much are those properties worth?
So there are more than 10,000 Tangled titles in the city of Philadelphia, which equates to over $1 billion in assets and wealth. That again is, resources that families are not able to access, that they can't utilize, they can't, transfer property, they can't apply for basic systems repair work, they can't apply for home equity loans, and they can't use it as collateral to, jumpstart a business. Tangled title has been a problem. And it's usually when families come to our office, normally they're in crisis over learning that they're in a Tangled title. And we direct them to an attorney like Dorothy, or someone else in community legal services who can assist them during this process. We always do encourage families from the beginning, if you can, start with a realtor or a broker like Sergio. Make sure you purchase title insurance from Keisha, or any other title company. Education is the key in untangling titles, and make sure in preventing titles, make sure that you start with estate planning. Anything that you have is worth investing in, and making sure that you have that you set up an estate. So we always tell families, make sure you speak with an attorney.
If there are no more questions, I would like to add on something about water that has been a big issue in the city of Philadelphia.
Go ahead.
Properties that there are some properties that are no, there is no water meter, or the meter has been tampered, and the water department has not been getting the readings for years. There is properties that the last reading is 10 years ago. And when you go and get title insurance, then, Keisha, title companies get, send a request to the water department. And that's when, we come up with this news. Hey, this property has not, the meter has not been read for 10 years. So then that's a situation where, in order for the title companies to insure these titles, we have to get, get the water department, the property, have them install a water meter. And usually it takes 2 to 3 cycles for the water department to sort of see if they're gonna come up with like a back bill, retroactive for all these years. And that's been a nightmare dealing with these type of situations, because you have a buyer and seller usually anxious to make the deal happen, and and they're kind of seeing what's going on, especially when there is a mortgage involved, interest rate are on the rise. So that's a situation that is happening, and it goes back to Dorothy that says, get those title insurance. Get a title order right away as soon as you know you're gonna buy the property, as soon as you have in the contract, so that way you give, I guess, enough space to the title company to order it. And then, because if that water goes to the law department, then it takes, Keisha, you say 4 to 6 weeks for them to get a response sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes it's 4 to 6 weeks to get a response from them when there's not a meter in the property. And when the law department gets back to us, sometimes it's well over 6 weeks. And that information is important because if there hasn't been a meter in a property for 10 or 20 years, we have no way of telling how much usage is on that meter. And what we run a risk of is insuring a property that could possibly have a $20,000 or $30,000 water bill that now we, the title company, would be responsible for if we decided to insure the water meter. So yes, it is a problem in the city. 6 to 8 weeks sometimes I think is too long for a water payoff. I don't know the processes of how it works once it gets to the law department, but that information is essential, because if you don't have a meter in the property, you have no way of knowing, how much water was actually used on that property. While escrow is an option at times, Sometimes I don't want to take the risk because you may not escrow enough money. And then you get caught with an escrow and then you still have 10 or 15,000 over that escrow that you're responsible for to your new buyer. So it is important to get that title search done immediately so that it allows time for us to get the payoffs that are needed. And if there is an issue with a water meter, that we're able to get that information from the city of Philadelphia.
And I think that's important to remind people that water and gas utilities are both liens on your property.
Yes.
So if they don't get paid, they are both liens on your property, which means if you want to sell the property or you want to finance the property, those have to be paid off. And I can't stress enough to people who already own property, who are maybe renting residential property or even renting commercial property. It is so important that you stay on top of those things and that you're checking with your tenants. And, you know, for residential, there is a landlord cooperation program in which, you know, you can, as the owner, can register with the program so that you don't end up in a situation where you have a lien on the property. It's not eligible for commercial owners, which is why it's very important for commercial owners and for leases that we do in Philadelphia. We always say the tenant is obligated to deliver us proof that gas has been paid monthly. And, you know, unfortunately, sometimes, you know, we give you the tools, but people, you know, get complacent and they're like, oh, they've paid the gas for the last 6 months, I'm not going to worry about it. And then, you know, a year later, you find that there's a $15,000 gas lien on your property by this tenant. And, you know, the commercial situation, you're not going to be successful by telling PGW that, oh, well, that was ABC company who used the gas. They're responsible. PGW is going to say, no, you're the owner, you're responsible. If you want to try and go collect it from them, good luck, but you owe it to us. So it is so important that if you are a homeowner, a property owner, and you are leasing property, that you stay on top of your gas and water so that you don't end up at a time when you want to be able to tap into that property to the money that's available in equity in that property to be stuck, that you're going to have to use some of that money to pay off an old gas or water lien because you weren't staying on top of that.
That's so important. I mean, I have gone to settlements where sellers have paid the tenant's gas bill and you can't help it. I mean, it is what it is. Now, if you're selling your property, that's what we do also in the property management. Every month we check on the water bill. There is, you know, you have the storm, the usage, and the service. So you got three separate, charges in your water bill. So you want to make sure you're always checking on the usage, that they use usage, because if there is a zero usage, there is something going on with the meter. Either the tampering is malfunctioning, but you as the owner of the property want to make sure you call the water department, get the water department back in that. If it's occupied, if it's rented, you go and check yourself, see what's going on with the water meter, why it's not reading. And if you can't see nothing strange, just call the water department. The meter shop is $350. You get it replaced and you get a reading. Don't let years go by because you're gonna be paying for it. It's not just gonna go away. And the LCP is so important to register your rental properties with the LCP, Landlord Cooperation Program, because if you get your rental license as you're supposed to, and you register with the LCP and the tenants do not pay the gas bill, you're not on the hook for it. But if you don't register, then you're gonna be responsible for paying your tenant's bill, gas bill.
Thanks, Sergio. I think Dorothy and Sergio shared some really important advice about gas and utility bills and liens on that. We're here. We should wrap it up. It's 11:30. Keisha, Tracy, do you have anything else you'd like to share to kind of most important things people should walk away with, like a fact or two what they should walk away with for this webinar?
I would say just do not purchase a property without title insurance. I know it's cliche, it sounds, okay, I know, but it's extremely important. You wouldn't drive a car without car insurance. So you shouldn't purchase a property without title insurance because it protects your investment. It's going to protect your generational wealth. And the last thing you want to do is purchase a property that you intend to pass down to your kids, but you didn't do your due diligence in getting that title search and making sure that you had title insurance on the property.
Absolutely. How about you, Tracy? Any parting words or parting advice?
Yeah, I just would echo everything that Keisha said. Just make sure that you are utilizing licensed professionals when you are, transacting one of the most biggest assets and that you'll ever purchase and transfer.
Good point. And Dorothy and Sergio, I'll let you go also one more chance. Any parting words, parting advice you'd like to give?
To reiterate, title insurance, title insurance.
Yes.
And act promptly and be proactive. Remember, time is not your friend.
Yes.
I would
Sergio.
say the same thing, just like real estate, location. When you're buying is title insurance. And if you're not savvy, if you're not a pro, just seek help. I mean, you don't want to pay the price. Sometimes the price is more costly than the actual professional service that you could get. So
absolutely.
Once you learn, you do it on your own, but don't do it if it's your first time, or if you're not comfortable with it, or if you're not professional at it, or been doing it,
This has been an amazing panel. So thank you, Sergio, Keisha, Dorothy, and Tracy, and Marla for joining us, and Jasmine for making this happen. Thank you so much. And all the audience members for making time today. I hope you really learned a lot, because I did. And and thanks for joining us again. And thank you again, panelists, for making time and your expertise sharing it today. All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.